Viva Las Vegas, Maddie. Greetings from the desert. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing totally fine. I'm enjoying March Madness here in the beautiful Nevada desert and having a blast, checking things out. I did not know I was going to be here for a Sweet 16, but it turns out I am.
That is
So,
fantastic. I'm so excited for you.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy that we got the chance and we were already here on vacation. So
Yeah.
it's legit. This is perfect scenario for me. Getting to watch a
From
basketball
the
game.
looks at it looks like Avery already helped extend that Venmo or Cash App that I sent her since you got your sunglasses on.
Well,
Had a few too many
I saw
drinks
you guys.
already.
I saw you sent the Venmo, and I told her at some point when I'm going to play table games or something, I'll go down and make sure I put $20 on black for you on the roulette table. As Wesley Snipes says, always bet on black. So
Exactly.
words to live by.
100%.
So it was an absolutely crazy March Madness. I was looking at our bracket that we made in the bracket, our bracket think tank on Sunday, and my goodness, that thing is torn up like Swiss cheese. I don't know if you got to take a look
Oh
at it
yeah.
yet. Yeah, it's rough.
That's what happens when you go with logic rather than heart.
I know. I mean, that's the
If
beauty
I
of
would have gone heart, I would be so good right now. But because we decided logic this year was the way to go, my apparent national champions, the Kansas Jayhawks, are no
Bye-bye.
longer in the running. But I'll take a hog win over a good bracket any day.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I said it in the bracket show. I absolutely hope I'm wrong. I also said like there's an outside chance that they could do it. Like I think Kansas still wins that game 7 out of 10 times. But you know what? They caught them on the three. And that's what
They
matters.
caught Devo Davis on a Madman's tour.
Devo Davis tore it up. Yeah, absolutely. 20 points for Devo or 20. What he ended up with 25, 26
25.
in that game. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely crazy game for Devo. I was watching that game while we were coming into town. We were in Phoenix before we got to Vegas, and while we were in Phoenix, watching it, told my buddy Jay, it's like Devo right now is playing like someone who's been to multiple Elite Eights and is not going to settle for falling out in the first weekend right now. Like they may not win, but he's going to give it all, and he absolutely did. Devo Davis absolutely kept driving to the hole, doing everything he could to make buckets happen, points happen. He was the hot hand the Hogs needed, and the Ricky Council took him the rest of the way. Also, the unsung hero I felt like in that game was Jordan Walsh's defense and some of his rebounding,
Yep.
along with Monty Johnson's offensive rebounding was huge in that game. Really, really big upset for Arkansas to knock off a number one seed. And like we pointed out, like in the bracket show, you talk about one seeds, you only expect maybe one to fall in the round of 32 before
Mhm.
the second weekend. In this season, you've got Purdue and Kansas both checked out, and it's wild. Like it's been a nutty March Madness.
It is. We've talked a little bit at work about it, and I just said I think this is the most upset March Madness that I've seen so far since I've been paying attention to it.
Yeah, and I won't know if it's necessarily the like one with the most upsets. I've seen several upsets, and we know the transfer portal was helping a lot with that stuff. The transfer portal was causing more upsets because you get more experienced players, along with the guys who still have COVID years remaining to play basketball. So you got
Yeah.
a lot of 5-year players sitting in there for mid majors, and that flow of what level players are playing at is moving up and down. But for like, it's nuts. But like, take for instance Friday night. There wasn't a
Mhm.
lot of upsets going on, but like we got probably the second biggest upset in the history of March Madness on that night. You had
Yeah.
FDU beating Purdue, and that's only the second time in the history of the men's tournament that the a 16 seed has beaten a one, and it's happened now in the last 5 years, twice in the last 5 years. Before then,
Yeah.
it was like 100 something games to nothing, to 1 to 16 seeds, and here's FDU following in the footsteps of UMBC, and it's crazy. That's no one in the world has that predicted unless they're making a
Yeah.
mascot bracket. You know what I mean? Like that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, for sure. That Princeton absolutely wild. I guess at least one of the Tigers
Yeah,
made it further than we expected.
yeah. Princeton was another crazy upset. You remember I told you, like, during the bracket show we also talked about like a 15 seed has upset a two in the last previous couple of years. You talk about Oral Roberts beating Ohio State. You talk about
Yeah.
last year it was St. Peter's beating Kentucky, and then this year you've got oh, dadgummit, Princeton joining the club. It's been a crazy, it's continuing that trend that 115 seed beats a two. And
Yeah.
I don't know if we're misrepresenting. The crazy thing is that's not even the 15 seed that we thought had the best chance. Like, out
Yeah,
of all,
for sure.
like, Princeton came in, got the job done. I guess the moral of the stories is don't bet against underseeded 15 seeds or in from New Jersey. Like that's the moral of the story, because you got St. Peter's and Princeton, like don't bet
Yep.
against New Jersey, baby. Like,
I feel like that's everything that we've heard on the NCAA March Madness app. Every game I've watched so far is those New Jersey schools.
those New Jersey schools, like they're scary.
Yep.
Like, there's some tough kids playing some tough basketball out there, and they're getting the job done. Really, really crazy year. But yeah, let's go through these games real fast and talk about how the SEC did here in this first weekend. Honestly, let's leave the first four out of it. It just because that you're not in the main portion of the bracket. Let's talk
Yeah, for sure.
about the first weekend. Of course, Mississippi State did lose to Pitt. And that would put the SEC at 9-5. But if you just look at 64 and 32, those rounds, SEC going 9-4. Collectively,
Yeah,
very, very good showing from the SEC, a conference that was
definitely.
not thought to necessarily be the best. And then you also got that over 40% of the teams that were brought into the NCAA tournament advancing into the Sweet 16, taking up 3 slots, almost 25%, just short of 25% of the Sweet 16 is an SEC team.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the tweet that I made earlier. I was kind of going through, some of the sports basketball Twitter verse, I guess, and said, if we count Texas, since they're
Yeah.
coming, we got SEC representation in every division right now.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, Texas will be here in the next 2 years. They showed outstanding performance in the tournament again. I shouldn't say again. This is their first Sweet 16 in several years. It's been almost 15 years since they made a Sweet 16 appearance, and here they are. Making that Sweet 16 appearance. So really solid for the Longhorns to get there.
Yeah,
I do think Texas owes Terry that job, in my opinion.
yeah,
Texas
definitely.
Texas fans may disagree, but like in my opinion, I don't know if recruiting is the question, have somebody have him make sure he hires a good make that a condition, hire a good recruiting coordinator. I don't know what to get because the man has done an outstanding job.
They got Matthew McConaughey. He can do the job.
But to say Texas has got great facilities, you're going to get good players.
Yeah, for sure.
And you get a proven track record of being a good coach and success in the NCAA tournament. You know what? I say bring him in all day long. But outside of just that, Mizzou wins an NCAA tournament game for the first time in a long time, advances to the round of 32. Really good showing. Tennessee, Rick Barnes gets to a Sweet 16 for the first time in a while. We were talking about that at the beginning of the season, how important it was for Tennessee to get to the second weekend, and they got the job done. They had to go through a Louisiana Lafayette team that was very difficult, a team that could have potentially caused an upset. Almost did cause an upset. That game was short. They just came 3 points short of it. And then they had to beat Duke, who was playing pretty dang well. Definitely had a good showing against Oral Roberts, and then Tennessee just out physical Duke the entire basketball game and ended up advancing themselves to the Sweet 16. And they've got a pretty darn good route in their bracket right now to keep going deeper. So really good showing for the Vols.
Yeah, for sure. I think surprisingly, a lot of the teams that we picked, SEC wise to make a deep run, Tennessee, Alabama, we picked Arkansas to, have a close game, but we didn't think that they were going to win. So I think, that says something about the SEC, just how dominant we've been this season and, proving people wrong. Also,
the SEC's been really solid. Like I said, KenPom, the net, every metric out there had the Big 12 as the best conference, but and here we are in March, and the SEC's shown out. Like I said, Alabama gets their job done, beats a 16 and beats an 8, and they're in the Sweet 16 playing San Diego State now. They're one game away now from tying their all-time best performance in March. You've got Missouri who wins a game, you've got Kentucky who wins a game. A lot of teams picked up wins, like throughout the course of this tournament. Not everybody's going to make the Sweet 16. There's only 16 teams who are going to make it. So like the fact that the SEC went well above 500 and had some good wins, out of several teams, it just shows how difficult it was in the SEC this season. And maybe the home court advantages had an impact on the Big 12 SEC challenge earlier this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely something to look into. I think, what would be interesting for those future challenges, I know the Big 12 SEC is no more, but to have maybe neutral site games rather, where it's somewhere in the middle and we see a more neutral court game and really have more of a battle test than what we had this year.
Yeah, I think that would be more interesting. Of course, the Big 10 or Big 12 SEC challenge is going away next year. It's done after the season, but maybe that's something that's worked out for the future challenges. Just show a little bit more clarity for who is the better conference, because like I said, the Big 12 dominated the challenge this year, and the SEC shows out and does the best in March. Like I said, it's crazy, it's nuts. A lot of teams picked up wins. Out of the first round, this is just something that I was thinking about. I believe Texas A&M was the only loser in the first round, if I remember correctly. Like Auburn advanced, Alabama advanced, Arkansas advanced, Tennessee advanced, Kentucky advanced, and then who am I forgetting? Mizzou advanced. Yeah. So really, really strong showing. And yeah, Texas A&M just caught a super hot Penn State team who hit 13 3-pointers in that basketball game. So they had a rough one. Of course, I was asleep getting ready to go to Vegas on this trip. You watched that game. But
I was in bed keeping up with updates. You know me. I go to bed at like 10 o'clock.
You do what you do. You gotta make it work. I was trying to get myself some sleep so we could leave early to hit the road. But yeah, crazy scenario. Let's look at the Sweet 16 and these regionals a little bit and see exactly what we got going on, unless you got some other thoughts you want to share.
No, I'm good with that. I've been looking at it a little bit, and it's, one of those things where I feel like we're all in good positions, but if it's anything like the rest of the season, I have no clue what's going to happen.
No,
or the rest of this March Madness, I mean.
Yeah, no, everything's crazy. If this trend continues, all bets are off, in my opinion. But yeah, let's start with the South region here and talk about Alabama versus San Diego State. I want to mention this real fast: the Maui tournament. I know the PK85 has several teams that are in here that made it to the Sweet 16, but also the Maui. You got San Diego State, Creighton, and Arkansas, who all advanced to the Sweet 16. Arizona was the winner of the Maui, and they got knocked out by Princeton. But 3 teams out of the 8 from Maui are in the Sweet 16. That's pretty promising, just to show how competitive that tournament was this year. I think anyway. And you got the team that finished 3rd in Arkansas, the team that finished, I believe, 5th in San Diego State, and the team that finished in 2nd in Creighton. So pretty interesting field. When we talk about the winners out of that, I just found that interesting about the Maui tournament. But we talked about the potential for San Diego State and Alabama a little bit earlier this season with Benji, and of course Benji has San Diego State possibly upsetting Alabama in this round. Maddie, what are your kind of thoughts about this very talented San Diego State team out of the Mountain West facing the Tide?
I think they are a solid team based on what I've seen from them and how they've played throughout this season. But the Tide still looks unstoppable. Maybe they find a weakness. Maybe they are able to get under somebody's skin. Get the freshmen to make those freshman mistakes. But from, what we've seen from Alabama, it might be a close game, but I think Alabama's not letting anybody stop them right now.
I agree with you. Alabama looked 100% like they were the number one overall seed this weekend. Out of the
Yeah.
one seeds, they look the best to me. And I think that's going to continue for the time being. They won all of their games so far by double digits, by almost 20 plus, yeah, by more than 20 points in each of those ball games. So very convincing wins. San Diego State, very good basketball team. But I've been trying to find a route in which Alabama or San Diego State might pull this upset and what would be the concern. And the biggest thing I've just kind of noticed out of this entire thing is really San Diego State doesn't turn the ball over as much as Alabama.
Mhm.
San Diego State averaging a little over 10 turnovers a game, Alabama closer to 14. So we're talking about 4 different turnovers in this game. The offensive ratings, they're slightly comparable. Both these teams above 110. Defensive rating, both these teams in the 90s. Alabama a little bit better. Then neither team racks up a huge amount of fouls, averaging under 20 per game. But Alabama, to me, like, I think where they have this thing is that they're winning the rebound differential by almost 4 rebounds a game compared to San Diego State. So, and we know that's a point of emphasis for Nate Oates. So I kind of like Alabama on the boards, but it just comes down to, do the Tide have one of those games where they turn the ball over a lot? Because we've seen them cough it up over 20 times before in a basketball game. So I think that may be the route for San Diego State. But overall, I think Alabama's 3-point shooting and rebounding is what ultimately gets the Tide to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like freshmen making freshman mistakes, they're going to turn the ball over more. Especially, if San Diego State acts pretty strong defensively, like they did against Arkansas earlier in that Maui tournament that you mentioned. And, I guess the key here is they better be on it shooting so they don't have to go in and get boards.
Yeah, team that, they're pretty comparable on their true field goal percentage and field goal percentages. So I don't think that, San Diego State's not going to win this game just because they're the better shooting team by making 50% of their baskets on drives to the hole and get a ton of layups. So it's going to be a situation where San Diego's defense is going to have to play well in order to get a W here. Otherwise, I think Brandon Miller and company are just going to run right through this game. Like when you look at the 3-point shooting alone, you're talking about Brandon Miller, who's averaging 3-point field goals made a game. San Diego State's number 1 3-point shooter, Adam Sieko, I believe is how you pronounce that, under 2 3-pointers made per game. So I don't know where the average is going to come. Matt Bradley is also their game high scorer with 27. Brandon Miller's hit 40 plus before this season. So I'm concerned that San Diego State may not have the ability. And then when I look at their offensive rating, I'm trying to recall the fact that not only do they have a good offensive rating, but the teams that they play throughout conference play are not as talented as the defenses that are faced in the SEC. So I'm feeling more and more confident about Alabama beating San Diego State than possibly I was on bracket night.
Yeah, I mean, confidence for me is at, like I said, 99%. I was just trying to find loopholes as to where San Diego State might win this one. And honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, haters can come at me on Twitter if they win this game, but that's my thought process on it.
I get it. I totally get it. I mean, logic says, like, we've seen what logic gets you this season, but dang you, logic. But in all honesty, like, how else are you going to approach looking at the basketball game? What I will say is that the way that San Diego State played against Furman. Now, Furman, for all intents and purposes, like, when they were in that basketball game with Virginia the entire time, the mistake by Virginia was made. Furman wins the basketball game. Furman versus San Diego State was not a game. San Diego State punched Furman right in the mouth and said, "You're not going to get to the Sweet 16. Sorry." So definitely saw what they can do against teams that have the ability to upset other teams, but they're going to get a heck of a test in Alabama. So I don't know. We'll see. This is a San Diego State team that played Arkansas very competitively in Hawaii. We've seen Arkansas play Alabama very competitively. So we'll see how this turns out. Maybe it's closer than what we think. but I'm pretty confident the Tide win this basketball game.
What's your score prediction? Let's do it.
So for Alabama, I'm thinking they're going to score within the 80s. I'm thinking 83. And for San Diego State, I'm thinking somewhere around 75 is how I think they'll be. So 83-75, maybe 85-75. Alabama wins by 8, 10, maybe even 12 points. Somewhere around there is probably going to be the spread. Alabama's point per differential per game this season is around 13 points. So that seems about on pace, especially with the increased amount of talent as they're going to play throughout the rest of this tournament. And don't forget, those numbers are also inflated because, they beat Vanderbilt and LSU earlier this season by about $1 billion. So yeah, don't forget about that as well. So those numbers are slightly inflated. So I do think, a 10 point win is possible for Alabama. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, my initial thought was 87, Alabama 73, SDSU.
Okay, that's fair. So we're in the same ballpark. Alabama getting into the 80s, SDSU possibly getting into the 70s, and that's why I said the defense is going to be massively important. You can't let Alabama score 80 if you want a chance in this basketball game.
Win with 20 on you.
Do what?
Win with 20 on you.
Yeah, you can't do it. Can't do it. Yeah, it's not good. Don't let Brandon Miller go for 25 because he's more than capable of doing it. So and don't let Noah Clowney and Bediako suck up like 14, 15 rebounds between them and all sorts of you can't do that. You gotta make your points count. You need to slow this game down, I think, if you're San Diego State, and let your defense do its job. Because you got a talented defense. So we'll see if that's the approach that's taken by SDSU, but that would be my thought. The coach's name is escaping me right now, but I know he hates Eric Musselman. Like, they had one of the biggest rivalries back when Muss was at Nevada, but I just can't think of his name right now.
I think that was our biggest point in that podcast. So we talked about
we talked about Ben Brandon about the Maui tournament. Yeah. We were talking about like how much San Diego State fans hate Eric Musselman. Yeah.
And apparently now everybody does. So
yeah, well, you know what? Let's get down to Arkansas real fast in the West region. Let's talk about that real fast about the shirt. We know as Razorback fans that Muss once a year takes his shirt off. And, after a big win, we've seen it 3 times. He does it once a year. He did it after the Hogs beat Texas Tech on their in 2001 when they finally got to a Sweet 16 in the first time in forever. We saw him do it when Arkansas beat Auburn because a number 1 team not named the Razorbacks had never been beaten in Bud Walton Arena. It was the first time a number 1 team had even played who were not named the Razorbacks in Bud Walton. That was the first time that happened, and Arkansas was 1-0 against number 1 AP teams in Bud Walton Arena. So that was a huge win for Arkansas, a historic win. So we saw Musselman do that, take his shirt off for that one, which is that very famous T-shirt that's been going around with the arm sling on Musselman. And now we've seen him take off his shirt for beating the defending national champions in the round of 32 this season. And like I don't understand while some people are upset. I don't. And like maybe I'll legitimately say this. I'm a Razorback fan. You're a Razorback fan. We probably don't get it because we're Razorback fans. So like I would like someone to explain to me logically why people are upset, or if it's just pure hate. Like that's what I want to know, because like right now it looks like pure hate to me, and haters gonna hate, but I am more than open that there might be a logical reason. Because that's just kind of the person I am. I would love to hear your point on that, but I don't understand. The biggest one I saw was like, you're taking this win away from the kids. Is like, no, they took it right to the fans, and like they're celebrating in the locker room. Like I said, we've seen Muss do this. This is the culture.
No matter the level of talent, you can't win without a good coach in the NCAA tournament. So it's as much his win as it is the kids.
I get it. Like I'm with you. Like Arkansas, to me, like it is, Eric Musselman will give the players all the credit in the locker room in the post-game conference. But he gets a chance to celebrate, in my opinion. And I thought that's what he was doing. I cracked up. I was like, and there goes the shirt. And I'm sure Danielle Musselman was over there Danielle was in the exact same mindset of like, there he goes. He's going to take the shirt off. So I don't totally understand it, but
I absolutely love it because, like you said, we're Razorback fans, and Muss is fantastic in my mind. But if, it was another coach doing it, if I saw Nate Oates do that, I would be like, what is he doing? He is so stupid. Like this is dumb. And not to pick on Alabama, but that's the first coach that came
Coach
to
that
mind,
came to your head.
like,
Yeah.
of like
You wouldn't
prominence
expect Bill
that
Self to do
people
that.
would
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect Bill Self to do that. You wouldn't
exactly.
expect, anybody who runs one of the blue blood programs to do that. Arkansas is one of those teams that are really a national championship away from being in that group with like Villanova and Georgetown and
Yeah.
those very prominent basketball teams that are kind of left out of the blue blood conversation, but are very well respected. Like they're probably a national championship win away from that conversation of being in that group. Um, yeah, I understand that. Like, it's so unexpected for a coach to do that. But to me, like, Arkansas has always been a program that's kind of outside the norm to begin with. We're a very small state. If you look at the most betted on teams throughout the country, every state except for Arkansas, according to one book, I'm trying to remember which book it was that I saw this, but except for the state of Arkansas, is the only one that didn't have a pro team select as their number one betted on team. It was the Razorbacks. Like Arkansas is just Arkansas. Like in my opinion, we just got a very weird culture because the whole state's bought in. We have no other team that's in the power 7 or 5 in football. The state is very much in. You can go to another school and probably be a Razorback fan. In this state, it's not like Texas. Texas has Texas A&M, Texas Tech, TCU, very competitive across the board, whereas Arkansas is Arkansas.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you think about it, like small scale version, like think high school football in like Texas,
yeah,
like the whole town's bought in, and the games are sold out. Like that is Razorbacks on a much bigger scale.
much larger scale. Yeah, no, I agree with that, and that's just the culture in Arkansas. Like I said, I don't fully understand the upsetness about the shirt
Yeah.
coming, but like I said, I'm open for someone explaining that to me, and logically explaining that, and I'm happy to debate somebody on that and be like, it's not a big deal. So but apparently you get hated on nowadays for taking this off. My favorite part of that whole thing, and then we'll move on and actually talk a little basketball here, was when Muss ran over and takes his rib. The fans are telling him to take his shirt off, and he takes his shirt off.
Yeah.
The part that cracked me up the most was this guy was just sitting in the stands, Razorback fan over there, and he's like, yeah, yeah. And then Muss rips his shirt off, and then the guy immediately is like, yeah, and just takes his shirt off. like,
Solidarity.
I was like, what? We just all need to take I might take my shirt off if they win on Thursday. Muss takes his shirt off. I'll take my shirt off on Thursday. Like, don't
Run around Vegas shirtless, David. Do it.
I'll do it. Do it if
It
they.
wouldn't be the worst thing that's happened there. I can tell you that.
But yeah, no, wild scenario. Yeah, but let's talk about their upcoming game with UConn. Arkansas and UConn, to me, pretty interesting matchup. In all honesty, I don't know how to feel about this game. It smells like this is going to be a very, very competitive ball game. I've been
I think it's
trying
going to
to
be
rank
very competitive, very aggressive, um, very defense heavy on both sides.
the game that I think is going to be played very tight between big men. I think Eric Musselman's going to have to choose very collectively. He's going to have to make good selections down low. Like you're going to have to figure out when to put Jalen Graham in the game. You're going to have to figure out when to put the Mitchell twins in the game and when to put Kamani Johnson in the game. Monty stepped up quite a bit so far in the tournament for Arkansas.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's played huge. But he figuring out that structure because Sonogo is no joke. That man can play basketball. Just flat out can. For UConn, you're talking about a guy who hits almost 17 points a game, rebounds 7.3, almost 8 rebounds a game. He's got the best true shooting percentage on the team at almost 65%. He's dominant. He is a dominant big man. And he only picks up like 3 personal fouls a game. So it's a concern. That's a guy that you need to be aware of, and you've got to figure out a solution on how you're going to play Sonogo. He's really good. Now,
Yeah.
the numbers for the stats reflect that UConn plays pretty well, compared to Arkansas's offensive rating. This is the difference to me. As I looked at the offensive rating, and they're almost 10 better than Arkansas on the offensive end. They're at 116.7, Arkansas at 107.6. The defenses are pretty much the same. Both teams right around that 97. If you round them up or down, they're right around 97. Points per 100 possession. Points per shots and points per possession favor UConn. If you look at those collective stats, for me, I tried to figure out, like, is it because UConn has played, weaker teams? Because I do think UConn's good, but I do wonder if those numbers are slightly inflated. And then I looked up their strength of schedule, and Arkansas and UConn both have 10.6 scores, 10.3 on team ranking for their schedules. They are the number 13 and number 14 teams on their strength of schedule this season. Those aren't the net rankings, and we'll probably you might take a look at those as well to see which one's winning that one out. But according to team rankings, their schedules were just as difficult. And I do believe UConn played a pretty tough schedule. They were the PK 85 champions. They're in Portland this year, and we've seen the last champion or multiple champions come out of the winner or whoever was the champion of a multi-team event like that. So UConn, definitely a very difficult opponent, very talented opponent. The Big East, though, performance-wise here in March has been okay. You've got Marquette, who lost to Michigan State yesterday. You've got Providence, who lost to Kentucky. And I know there's one that I'm forgetting about right now. Creighton's also in the Sweet 16, team that made it in Maui. So it's one of those, like, this is good. They've got good teams in the Big East, but they've also got some teams like St. John's, no offense to Mike Anderson, who just were never really in the conversation to make it to the Sweet 16. Whereas, the SEC, I think, was a little deeper. So those stats could be slightly inflated for playing some of those weaker teams, but I need to look at those numbers. I'm curious on how Musselman approaches this game, because to me, Arkansas's defense is going to be the key in this basketball game for Arkansas to continue their run that they're on to repeat to a third Elite Eight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think defense is going to be super important. And for me, the key on defense is not to foul.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to if Muss is going to have some people played back a little bit, or, type of aggression we're going to have in the paint with Sonogo, especially. My first thought when we were talking about him earlier with one of my coworkers, I said, where is Jalen Williams when you need him to take those charges from Sonogo and get that man out of there?
Yeah, this is a Jalen Williams special right here. That would be Arkansas's game plan if this was the case last year. If Arkansas drew this team last year, it would be the Jalen Wilson game. Or what am I talking about? Jalen Williams. Like, good grief, what am I on right now? But this would definitely be Jalen's game. Figuring this out is going to be a little bit more difficult. I personally, what I have seen so far in the tournament, I don't like Kamani Johnson's size in this, but what I do like is how he fights for every offensive rebound. And to me, second chances for Arkansas, a team that shoots pretty darn well from the floor when they get in the transition, is crucial for the Razorbacks. So I think if Arkansas can get enough rebounds, they can play some electric, high scoring basketball. That's the question. Can Arkansas get in transition? Can Arkansas speed this game up much faster than what UConn wants to play this at? To me, that's a very, very big question. Looking at the pace of play for this game, Arkansas sits there with the second fastest pace in the SEC at 68.9. I'm surprised by that, because like earlier this season, Arkansas was third. And I'm surprised to see that they moved past Mizzou. So that's kind of a surprise for me. I guess
I think it's more Mizzou probably slow down rather than Arkansas speeding up much.
Yeah, that's probably the case. But whereas you're looking at, UConn, they're the seventh fastest team in the Big East. So I think you definitely want to play faster. Arkansas is averaging an extra possession a game compared to UConn. So Arkansas playing fast is exactly what Arkansas wants to do, in my opinion. So
speed it up, force turnovers,
and great defense, get in transition. Those are the two things that I think Arkansas needs to do in this game. And I think also when you do that, you have the potential to start wearing Sanogo down if he has to run that floor constantly, because you've got multiple big men that you can put into that game for Arkansas. If Arkansas can put the game in transition, I like that scenario, because then you're going to have to sit Sanogo and let him rest, because big men have to run the floor. That's a big part of basketball. That's how you stop the transition game, is your big man has to be able to clog up the basket as quickly as possible. So to me, if Arkansas can get out in transition, and that's going to rely on the guards, that's going to be Ricky Council, that's going to be Debo Davis, that's going to be Anthony Black, and then it's going to have to be also on Nick Smith Jr. And that's one of the things we haven't talked about yet with Arkansas. Nick Smith played okay in the Illinois game, did not play great against Kansas. Where is Nick Smith Jr.?
One of my friends asked me about it after Saturday's game, and I said, I don't want to discount Nick Smith. He's made the push to come back and play, which, is amazing, I'm sure, for more than just, the bare minimum of this team. I'm sure it helped build morale, because, he wants to be in there. He wants to be a good teammate. But for me, I'm kind of checked out on him. I think, he's leaving in a few weeks. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but you think about you're trying to think of the word. You think about all the pressure that he's on, and, underperforming. And he said less time to build chemistry with this team because of his time spent away. So I don't know if it's just all of that adding up and getting to him, or what the deal is. But hopefully, maybe after how amazing Debo Davis played and all the love that he got, and it seemed like everybody was uplifting everyone on that team after that win. Hopefully that'll help him out and he can give us a push in this game.
Yeah, I think it definitely would be important, because I think Nick Smith Jr. is the key to get Arkansas into the Final Four. That's what you need. You need him to show up, because you just beat, arguably, I think, the team that I had picked to win the national championship this year.
I did as well.
Kansas. You just beat that team. They're the national champs. They're a very good basketball team. Granted, you did it without Bill Self being there. We both thought that Bill Self might be back for that game, and it just didn't work out that way. But you just beat that team without Nick Smith having his best night. I think when Nick Smith can put his game together, like we saw him do against Oklahoma and other teams earlier in the season, or in the Auburn game, he played great in the Auburn game in the SEC tournament. When he does that, they look like a Final Four team. When he doesn't, that's the difference. That's the difference between taking Arkansas to that next level. And I think if Nick Smith, he's got a week of practice here, if you can get him to go, it would be very helpful. But right now, through 2 games, I'm very concerned that Nick Smith is, looking a lot like Moses Moody. And Moses Moody, great player for Arkansas, but when it came to March Madness, he didn't really show up for Arkansas. And he was an important player for their game plan. So you just hope that that's not the case, and that Nick Smith shows up on Thursday for Arkansas.
Yeah, hopefully some additional practice, some additional rest will really help his game out, and he'll do much better than we saw in the Kansas game.
For sure. All right, let's take a quick break right here, and then we'll talk about Tennessee right after this.
Let's be honest, you're here because you love sports. We love sports too, and our friends over at Row One Brand love sports as much as we do. Row One Brand sells sports wall art, sports gift watches, and vintage apparel with ornamental designs created from real game ticket stubs and vintage sports memorabilia in their collection. If you want some vintage Golden State Warriors memorabilia, they have that too. It's a sports collector's dream website for anything sports related. Go over to row1brand.com to check out their great inventory. And when you use the promo code VSP15, you'll get 15% off any item on the whole site. That's code VSP15 for 15% off any item on the site. So click on the link below and go check them out. Row Run Brand, America's best vintage sports art, sports gifts.
All right, Maddie, so we got one more team to talk about, and that is the Tennessee Volunteers. Never have I seen, though, a basketball team, and this isn't the Vols, that has became more hated in one day as a mid-major than the Florida Atlantic Owls. I have not seen nothing but hate on Florida Atlantic since they beat FDU yesterday, and it's for two reasons: because they tried to get that dunk right at the end of the basketball game, and then also, of course, they beat America's Sweethearts in the 16 seed FDU. So right now, not a lot of Florida Atlantic fans in their back corner to play Tennessee. Did you catch any of that Florida Atlantic Memphis game? I know you're probably caught a little bit of it being a Memphis fan, Maddie.
I saw a little bit. I watched a little bit of the recap while I was at the gym actually this morning, trying to go through some games that I missed. It's a rough one for the Tigers, but FAU's kind of been a surprising team for me. I guess I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to them during the season. So for me, I was kind of blindsided, like they came out of nowhere. But, looking back, they had a good season, and, it makes sense for them to kind of start going on a run.
Yeah, over 30 win basketball team, very talented. Got a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. Good team. I think I told during the bracket show when we talked about them last week, I said, don't be surprised if Florida Atlantic wins this game, even though we have Memphis picked. And that's the case. It was a very good basketball game between the two of them. Florida Atlantic's a good team, but on the other side, like I said, you've got a historic defense, and a team that showed that they can play without Zakai Ziegler a little bit when they beat Duke. And we thought that might be the final straw for Tennessee's postseason hopes, but here they are in the Sweet 16, clearly doing something right. Is he missed? Absolutely. But Tennessee right now playing good ball, got the ability to get things done. Right now, I really like their side of the bracket for them. They've got a legitimate chance to make the Final Four in these next 2 games. But let's talk about this Florida Atlantic game first. Maddie, who do you got in this one?
I'm going to take Tennessee mainly because in that Duke game, I feel like we saw more of the Tennessee team that we saw mid-season in the SEC. We saw the team that we thought was going to be a 1 seed, probably win out the SEC. And, no offense to FAU, but I think as long as we see that they're going to be a rested Tennessee team, a week of practice, and I feel like they're going to be a little bit more put together now that they've had time to figure it out without Zakai Ziegler. I feel like that's a dangerous combination for this Tennessee team.
It's a really good thing for them to get another weekend coming together and working out what they need to work out with in order to figure out how they're going to replace their point guard on the floor. Amazing wins by them. Like I said, they were one of the teams that had a circle potential upset game with Louisiana, got it done. Then they're facing Duke, tough team, got the job done. So I definitely like where Tennessee is headed. Earlier this season, we talked about, and I even think maybe a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the free throw line always being a concern with Tennessee because they're one of the worst teams, and not one of the worst, but they've been in the bottom half of the SEC all season for a team to get to the free throw line and make their free throws. Surprisingly, in this matchup, Tennessee actually averages making more free throws than Florida Atlantic. So as much of a concern as that normally is for me with the Volunteers, the stats actually favor Tennessee when it comes to the free throw line. So I think that's going to be huge. And a combination of their defense. I definitely like the chance for Tennessee to come out here and get a win. And then Santiago Vescovi to get, put some points up for them. There's also a lot of guys who've contributed along the way in this March Madness run. So yeah, I think Tennessee's the more complete basketball team to beat Florida Atlantic. So I'm really favoring the Vols to get through and make it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I'm as well. I think the only thing, kind of like I talked about in the Alabama game, the only thing in my mind that, could cause some concern here is if Vescovi or, anybody else that, Triple J has, if they're struggling around the 3-point line.
Yeah, and they do average less 3-pointers than Florida Atlantic, and that is the recipe for upset city a lot of the time, is a team that can shoot from 3. And yeah, the Owls almost averaging as much as Alabama, almost 10 3-pointers made per game. There's a lot of potential there for FAU to get the upset on that if they shoot well. But I like Tennessee with one of the best 3-point shooting defenses in the country to bring that number down. So that's definitely my thought process on it. A couple of names to know for FAU is Janal Davis, 13.5 points a game. Elijah Martin, two 3-point field goals made per game. That's a name that you'll probably hear throughout the broadcast. And then Golden, 6.4 rebounds a game for the Owls. So those are some names to circle, get used to hearing for that basketball game. Like I said, though, let's look at the bracket a little bit for Tennessee, because I think we're both in the same boat. The other side of the the East region here is Kansas State and Michigan State. Tom Izzo, as we've mentioned, he is the master of making the Final Four. Every 4 years, he seems to get a team into the Final Four, and this would be a year 4 situation for Michigan State. They play Kansas State in that other one. It'll be interesting to see who Tennessee plays in the next game. I definitely think that Kansas State would be the tougher opponent, but it very well could be Michigan State.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if we're seeing early signs of Tennessee, we could very well see early signs of Michigan State when it seemed like on top of their game early this season. But on the flip side of that coin, if we see a Kansas State team that played like they played the beginning of that game against Kentucky, and Tennessee can hold them to that, I feel like Tennessee's got an easy route there. But like you said, Tom Izzo, we need to just rename him Final Four Izzo and call it like
as John Ross
I
said,
think
it's January, February Izzo. So it is what it is. So yeah, I get exactly what you're saying here. Yeah, if that's the matchup, that'll be super tough. If it's the Tang Gang and Kansas State that's rolling right along, that'll be a very interesting basketball game between those two. But it's got the potential to get nuts. And it's stayed nuts the entire way through this tournament. We've got a bracket that we filled out full of Swiss cheese right now. We've seen some craziness throughout March, like we always do. Patty, what's the craziest thing you saw this weekend?
I don't know. I think it's probably going to have to be Princeton. Like I expected, after that upset that they were probably going to go out next round because, generally that 15 seed that beats the 2,
yeah,
they're done after.
Well, I mean,
that
one
game.
16, St. Peter's made the Elite Eight, and then Florida Gulf Coast made it to the Sweet 16 as well a couple of years ago. So I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, here recent, but stats would suggest otherwise. Historically, I know what you're saying. It's not an
but just them like being an Ivy League team, you never credit them for sports at all. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. Like you don't hear about Princeton. Like I did see, I think it was a TikTok of a girl that like she said her boyfriend wasn't talking to her because her bracket was better because she picked Princeton because of the Cinderella story or whatever that Hillary Duff was in.
Yeah, I want you to know right now that the brackets that we picked out, I've got my family's bracket group that we do where we play reset every weekend. I just use my dog's picks, and Joey's in second place right now in March Madness. In my family,
there we go, Joe.
By 4 points. He's beating me by 1 point right now. I am. Oh my gosh, dog! This is crazy what you're doing. Yeah. He had Princeton. The dog had Princeton. The dog had I believe someone else. They picked between the dogs, they picked 2 Sweet 16 seeds to beat 1 seeds. But unfortunately they picked the wrong 16 seed. They had Northern Kentucky and Howard winning. So, the dogs are making competitive runs right now in the bracket group. Just again, this is how crazy this tournament is that we legitimately have a dog in second place in a bracket group of people who watch basketball on a consistent basis. I was watching Charles Barkley X out his bracket, and same with Kenny on March Madness. They're just putting red X's through the entire thing, and like it's the mess. That's how my bracket looks. It's like this thing is destroyed. Like I have nothing that I've gotten pretty much right for the Final Four. I've got some games I've called perfect, and then I got a lot that are like half and half, and like
I only have 3 games left that I've called perfect in the Sweet 16.
it's nuts. It's terrible.
It's wild.
Yeah. So yeah, last night I was sitting at the sports bar, and this is the craziest thing I saw this weekend. But before I get to the precursor, tell what exactly happened at that moment. The bartender, he says to me, it's like, my favorite thing about March Madness this year is that I didn't place any bets. And I'm glad I didn't, because this has been the most absurd year I think I've seen in recent memory for sports betting. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Man. But yeah, well, I was sitting there in the sports book watching the games, and sipping my drink, and enjoying my vacation, enjoying my time. I'm out because I put my winnings on TCU money line. Just
Okay.
just for the heck of it.
Yep.
I'm already done. I'm cooked. They're down by 6 with a couple of seconds left. The line for this game though was TCU plus 4.5, and everybody in the sports book had Zaga apparently, because they were jumping down screaming like, yeah. And then that doesn't even matter garbage time 3-pointer sinks it. And the whole book went silent. Like someone had just.
That's hard for Vegas too.
Yeah, like everybody went silent except for one of the guys who were in the sports bar with me next to the sports book, and he's like, yeah. Just like so excited that this last 3-pointer was made, and I was like, this is absurd. This is the craziest thing I think I've seen in a while. Whole book went silent for March Madness. That's going to be on Bad Beats tonight with SVP on Sports Center. Is just like, it doesn't even matter, throw it up, and he sinks it. Just runs everybody with Gonzaga beating the spread at 4.5. So just absurd. Yeah, the madness doesn't even stop with just game straight picks. It gets used into betting as well, because I'm sure there were so many bad beats this weekend that I'm not even tallying because I didn't even think about them. But crazy moment here in Vegas for all those hardcore gamblers who probably had thousands of dollars in the game. And I'm over here like, I'm gonna drink my beer, I'm gonna drink my drink that got comped for me. This is nice.
Hey, I tell you, the best thing in Vegas is the people watching.
Yeah, the people watching is great. It's a wonderful time doing the people watching in Vegas. It's a blast. But yeah, good times were had by all. Oh my goodness. I still got a couple more days of enjoying out here. My father texted me and he goes, hey, don't forget Vegas has an excellent public library system.
Yeah, I mean, if you need some recommendations, the Mob Museum, I went there last time. It was pretty cool.
Dope. That would be a really good, I'm really into
I just came off of like finishing The Sopranos when I was there too, so I was all into it.
For it. I gotcha. Yeah, The Departed is one of my favorite movies. I love Goodfellas. I love pretty much anything by Martin Scorsese. So I'm down for that. That sounds like pretty good. I'm gonna have to look that one up. That'll be a good one to check out while I'm here in town. Is the Gangster Museum. Town pretty much founded by gangsters. So it's a wonderful, crazy city.
Love it. I hope you brought your walking shoes.
Shady history.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Top 10 shadiest histories in America, Las Vegas. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, Maddie, it'll be interesting to see. I want to talk about one more thing before we leave.
Okay.
This is basketball relevant for the people who are sitting around. And I'm leaving this on at the end of the show here. And I want you to know before I say that this is not a prediction. But in the history of the Final Four, there has been one other conference that has gotten 3 teams into the Final Four. And that was the Big East in the 80s. Those teams were Georgetown, St. John's, and Villanova. Very high-seeded teams, except for Villanova. Memphis was the only other team I believe it was Memphis, was the only other team in that Final Four who was not in, they weren't in the conference. But it's only been achieved once. The path to the Final Four, Alabama, has a pretty good route. It's not horrible. Yep. They're either going to face, if they beat San Diego State, they're either going to face Princeton or Creighton in the next round. Princeton would be a very interesting basketball game, but I think Princeton would fall to Alabama. Creighton, Alabama is the game that Tide fans are probably more than likely going to get. Then Tennessee, if they should draw Michigan State, is a team that's lower seeded than them. Like I said, there's a very good path for Tennessee to go to the Final Four. And then for Arkansas, they've got UConn they have to get through, very difficult game. And then they've got a very difficult game in either UCLA or Gonzaga.
Yeah.
But I didn't mention also in that last time that 3 teams from one conference made the Final Four, the team that won the national championship that year was Villanova. And they were the lowest seed of all time to win the national championship. And I believe, hold on, let me make sure I say it right. Make sure I get the seed right, because I know it's very similar, and I want everyone to know that my hotel here in Vegas, their Wi-Fi isn't the best, which kind of drives me crazy. They were an 8 seed. The Villanova Wildcats were an 8 seed when they won the national championship in 1985.
It's about time that happens again.
Maybe it does happen.
You're giving me too much hope.
I know, it's very weird, right? It's very, very odd.
That's eerie.
That's not a prediction, but it's an interesting piece of history that's kind of shaping, and it's not outside the realm of possibility. So weird year. And I'll also say what Villanova had to do to win that national championship was go perfect from the floor to beat Georgetown. There were some absurd things that happened to win that national championship for Villanova. But if you want more history on that one, go check out my favorite 30 for 30 Requiem for the Big East. They talk about that year. But yeah, that's it's conceivable. I'll say that. It's not, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's definitely an interesting piece of history. It's definitely an interesting piece of history. And should history decide to repeat itself this year in March Madness, because it has been an absurd year, and our SEC got a lot of teams into the Sweet 16, 3 teams in the Sweet 16. It's not unbelievable. It's not unbelievable that it could happen, because the SEC has right now looks like the best conference in basketball.
I would agree with that. It's made my heart happy. They're like, hey, our research is paying out.
Yep, it paid out. It's been an interesting year. Definitely an interesting year. All right. Well, the next time we'll talk to you guys will be our preview for March, or for the Final Four. So hope everybody enjoys the show, and we'll stick around for next week. I'll let everybody know what happened in Vegas.
Enjoy what is now going to be known as
but yeah.
Enjoy what is now going to be known as Hog Vegas from now on.
Yeah, I'm going to be referring to it Hog Vegas while I'm here. So
I mean, if Glendale can change their name for a Taylor Swift concert, Vegas can do it for a Razorback game. Exactly.
Yeah, it's Swift City. Yeah, it's fine. Totally good. Been in both locations in 1 week. It's nuts. But anyway, yeah. All right, guys, that is the show.